Hello everybody, we're going to hit you up with another presidential election. This one, the election of 1936. FDR going for the second term. Great Depression still going on. Can he get it done? Let's find that out right now. Now we're going to start off with the incumbent party, and that is the Democrats. The Democrats taking control of the White House in 1932 with the incumbent FDR of New York winning that election, and he really doesn't have any opposition to a second term from within the party. The only opposition that he really has was Henry S. Breckinridge, a fellow New Yorker himself, but FDR has no trouble in getting the nomination for a second term, and at the Democratic National Convention he was renominated unanimously. That honor also went to the Vice President, John N. Garner of Texas, as he was unanimously renominated for Vice President. Now that we have our Democratic ticket of FDR and Garner, let's go to the Republicans. Now the Republicans losing really big in 1932 with President Herbert Hoover, but come 1936, they want to change that. And their slated candidates up for nomination were the governor of Kansas, Alf Landon, Senator William Borah of Ohio, and newspaper publisher Frank Knox of Illinois. But at the end of the day, it is going to be Landon, who is a wealthy businessman and a centrist, and of course the governor of Kansas, receiving the Republican nomination for president, while Frank Knox was nominated as his running mate. Now that we have our Democratic ticket, FDR and Garner, and our Republican ticket of Landon and Knox, let's get to the campaign and see who's going to win this thing. Now, unfortunately for Landon, he proved to be an ineffective campaigner who rarely traveled. Most of the attacks on FDR and Social Security, which is one of the bigger programs to come out of the New Deal, were developed by Republican campaigners rather than by Landon himself. Social Security was one of the programs that was popular with many Americans as it pertained to the New Deal, despite the fact that FDR was having a little bit of trouble with getting the New Deal through Congress and getting it through the courts as well. In the 2 months after his nomination, he made no campaign appearances at all. Landon did not. As columnist Westbrook Pegler lampooned, considerable mystery surrounds the disappearance of Alfred M. Landon of Topeka, Kansas. The Missing Persons Bureau even sent out an alarm bulletin bearing Mr. Landon's photograph and other particulars, and anyone having information of his whereabouts is asked to communicate direct with the Republican National Committee. So this really shows what an ineffective campaigner Landon was, and this is really going to not help him in this election. Now, Landon respected and admired FDR and accepted much of the New Deal, but objected that it was hostile to businesses and involved too much waste and inefficiency. Now, late in the campaign, Landon had accused FDR of corruption, that is, of acquiring so much power that he was subverting the Constitution. And he said this: "The president spoke truly when he boasted, 'We have built up new instruments of public power.' He spoke truly when he said these instruments could provide shackles for the liberties of the people and enslavement for the public. These powers were granted with the understanding that they were only temporary. But after the powers had been obtained and after the emergency was clearly over, we were told that another emergency would be created if the power was given up. In other words, the concentration of power in the hands of the president was not a question of temporary emergency. It was a question of permanent national policy. In my opinion, the emergency of 1933 was a mere excuse. National economic planning, the term used by this administration to describe its policy, violates the basic ideals of the American system. The price of economic planning is the loss of economic freedom, and economic freedom and personal liberty go hand in hand. Now, the Great Depression at this point was entering its 8th year, and FDR remained pretty popular with the American people. And Landon's really ineffective campaign is going to do him in. But how much will it do him in? We'll take a look at those results right now. This is an electoral massacre. FDR and the Democrats, 523 electoral votes. Alf Landon and the Republicans would only carry Maine and Vermont in this election, only amounting to 8 electoral votes. So this is really a massacre for the Republican Party, and a lot of people, a lot of political pundits believed that after this election, the Republicans would go the way of the dodo bird. But as we'll see in the election of 1940, which we'll talk about next time, that didn't happen. In terms of the popular vote, it's going to be 60.8% for FDR and the Democrats, and 36.5% for Alf Landon and the Republicans. This is one of the more lopsided presidential elections in the history of the United States. In terms of the popular vote, it was the second biggest victory for the winner since the election of 1820. FDR also won the largest number of electoral votes ever recorded at the time. Only Ronald Reagan would surpass this number in 1984. And Roosevelt's 60.8% of the national popular voters have said was the second highest popular vote percentage won since 1820. LBJ would eclipse this number in 1964. So in other words, it is an electoral massacre for the Republican Party, and can they come back from such a loss like this? We'll see in the election of 1940, which we'll talk about next time. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got a lot out of it. If you haven't seen any of my previous videos, go on ahead and watch those if you want. And with that, we will see you next time.